So today, because it's Wednesday, we are finishing the Masechta tomorrow, and the Siyum, the Kiddush this Shabbos, will be sponsored under the Siyum. So if you want to sponsor it, I think we're trying for 180 a person. Let me know today, and we'll put your name up. And if you send the money, we could add it to someone's page manually. Someone maybe very tall, if you're interested, but that's just up to him. That's like a personal preference. All right, let's start. Actually, you know what? No, I'm mixing it up. I'm making a page for Arla, and I'm putting that up. Okay, we're up to the Mishnah and Daf Yomi Ches. Huh? No, don't. No. I'd rather manually add it, but then they don't get any of the percentages. Send it to me, and then I'll just manually add it. Do a regular yeah, regular sale is fine. All right, Daf Yomi Ches and Aleph. We're up to the Mishnah. But send it to me, and then I will manually on the back end add it to Adam's page. Daf Yomi Ches, the Mishnah. The Mishnah says like this: Hagoizlos. By the way, eventually it's going to happen. If you're listening to this, you can be completely lost. Eventually, what's going to happen is people are just going to give money to Adam. Like nothing to do with the page. Just give money to Adam. Mishnah says like this: Hagoizlos chaveroi. If you steal from your friend, oy shehilva imenu, or you borrow from him, or shehifkid loy, or you have his pikadon. All of these cases, you got to return something to him. So it could be you borrowed it, pikadon, you stole from him. The halacha is b'yishuv. If all of this happened in the city, lo yachzolei b'midbar. You are not allowed to force him to receive it in the desert. Meaning, in other words, like this: if you stole from someone in the city, in New York, or if you borrowed from someone in New York, okay, so you got to return it. Now you happen to be on vacation in Orlando for Pesach, and you see him, and you want to give it to him then, because you don't want to hold on to it in Orlando. You don't have to deal with the schlep back and forth. The halach is you are not allowed to force him to receive it there, because he shouldn't have to worry about schlepping it or dealing with it outside of the city. Huh? No. I've been looking at this like for 24 hours. I've seen this before, but no, I don't think we've had this. The point is, there's a mitzvah of returning the lost object. You are not allowed to force him to receive it. You're not allowed to force him to take it in the desert. The desert is anywhere away from his home, because he shouldn't have to be achroi to take care of it outside of his home.
You have to return. So you have to return it to him where he is.
Yeah, so it's a similar concept. And by the way, that would mean that if you do return it to him outside of his home in Orlando, and then something were to happen to it, you have to replace it, because it's not considered a hashava. Okay, says the Mishnah Vayter. But almanas lotzes b'midbar. But if when you borrowed it from him, obviously the stealing is not possible, but if when you borrowed it from him, you said, on condition I return it to you in Orlando, okay, then fine. Yasle b'midbar. Now the Gemara is going to ask, that's incredibly obvious. If you stipulated that you're going to return it to him, even in the desert, of course you could do it. The Gemara is going to ask that kasha. Fine. Let's go back to the Gemara. The Gemara starts the kasha. Minu, I have a contradiction. You said that you're not allowed to return it in the desert. You have to return it to his home. But doesn't the Brisa say, Milve mishtalemes b'chol makam, a loan could be paid anywhere? Avedu pikadon ein mishtalchen ela b'mkaymai, but a lost object and a pikadon can only be returned in their home. Meaning, a malva, a loan, could be returned anywhere. So how could you say that it has to be, everything must be returned to his home? It said a loan could be returned anywhere, even in Orlando, even in the desert. So what's the halacha? So it says the Gemara, Rabbi hachi kamar, milve nitna litava b'chol makom. When it says a loan mishtalemes b'chol makom, it doesn't mean a loan can be repaid anywhere. That's not fair. If you see someone walking in the city, taking a jog in the city, and he doesn't have his wallet with him, and you have the money handed to him, you say, oh, this is mishtalemes b'chol makom. No, of course not. You can't give it to him when he doesn't want to take it back. So what does it mean, mishtalemes b'chol makom? It means milve nitna litava b'chol makom. The borrower the lender can go to the borrower and say, pay me. He doesn't have to go to the borrower's house. He could if he runs in, let's say they're jogging, I lent you $1,000 and I'm in the city. Both these things are never going to happen. So the point is, I give you $1,000 and I run into you in the city. I'm allowed to be teveya you on the spot, and you can't say, come to my office. You can't ask me for money here. You have to ask me. No. A milva, I lent you money, I did you a chesed, I could ask for the money no matter where it is. But avedu pikadon le'ninu l'tav mekaymeh. But a lost object or a pikadon, I can only ask in your home. Why? It makes sense. When I lent you money, I did you a chesed. Therefore, I have the upper hand. I could ask you for whatever it is. If I ask you to watch something, you're doing me a chesed. So if I see you in the city, I can't say, I want my pikadon back. You can say, whoa. I'm not giving it to you back right now. I did you a chesed on my terms. You want it back? Come to my house. That's the halacha. But the point is, when it comes to me the borrower returning the lender, that can only be done in the lender's home. The Mishnah then said, so let's say I borrowed money from you. I can't pay you back in the middle of the desert. That's not fair to you. But, says the Mishnah, if I explicitly stated when I borrow the money, I'm doing so on condition I'm going to return the money. In the deserts, then of course, it's a tonight, whatever. So the Gemara says, Pshita, it's Pasha. Anytime you make a deal, you make a deal. So what's the Chiddush? That I told you I'm going to return to the desert? Okay, so of course if I told you I'm returning to the desert, it's Pasha. What's the Chiddush? The Gemara says the case is not exactly what you thought. The case is like this. I tell you, hey, do me a favor, hold on to my laptop, I'm going to the desert. Hold on to my laptop, I'm going to the desert. You say, you respond, oh, what a coincidence. I'm also going to the desert tomorrow. If I want to return it to you, maybe I will. So it's not where you said, I am borrowing it on condition I return it. It's not the case. It's you borrow the money and I say, hey, I'm going to the desert for a couple of days. You're like, oh, I'm also going to the desert. If I want to return it there, maybe I will. So you said maybe. Maybe yes, maybe no. The point is, because I know going in that there's a possibility, that's okay. It's not a case where you mamish explicitly state. If you explicitly said it's pashut, the case is where you made it clear that it's a possibility, and I didn't object. That's fine. That's okay.
And if you don't in any of these cases,
then you can't return in the desert.
Say you lend someone money, or you find them bummed in the street, and they say,
I can ask for it, but you don't have to force me to take it. Meaning, if you have the money and I'm in the desert, and you say I want to pay back my debt, I could say no, not on my. That's not my turn.
Somebody in the street where you lend them money, they owe you the money.
Correct.
They say, come to my house. Then, what's the ramification?
Who's the borrower or the lender in this case?
He's supposed to pay him. I don't have the money on me.
Okay, fine. That's a different story. If you can't pay it off, you can't pay it off. Our mission is dealing with, can the borrower force the lender to take back the money?
What does that mean, force?
Here's the money. I want out, and I can say I don't want the money. I'm jogging now. I don't want the money. If you try to force me to take it and then it gets stolen, you got to replace it. You did not return the money. It's not a hashava if you don't give it back to me on my terms. That's the point. Okay, Mishnah. One more Mishnah, and then the third Mishnah is game. So the second Mishnah is like this. Oh, I have no idea. I have no idea. A person says to his friend like this. Okay, so let's read the Mishnah the way it is, and I'll sort of say there's two possibilities. Okay, I say to you, Gizalticha, I stole money from you. I stole $100 from you. Or Hilvisina, I lent you, or I borrowed money from you. In both these cases, I'm admitting, out of the blue, that I owe you $100. If God the So I say to Adam, listen, I either stole $100 for you, I borrowed $100 from you. I don't know if I paid it back. So what's the halacha? Chayiv l'shalim. I have to pay. Okay. But if I say, because I admitted that there was a financial responsibility. But let's say instead of saying, I borrowed money from you, I don't remember I paid it back. I say, did I borrow $100 from you? I don't remember. So the halacha is pater. Pater, because I never admitted to a vadai financial claim. Now there's two ways to read this Mishnah. Okay? Let me just explain outside, just spoil the Gemara. There's two ways to read this Mishnah. Option number one, which I think is the more obvious case. So I said to Adam, hey, I think I borrowed money from you. I don't know if I paid you back. Or I'm not sure if, and then I'm chayiv. And then the second case is where I said, I don't know if I borrowed money from you, I'm pater. Option number one is, I'm not coming out of the blue. You said to me, you owe me $100. Meaning, first you said, hey, you owe me $100. And then I have two responses. One is, I definitely owe you $100. I took $100. I don't remember if I paid you back. So then I'm chayiv, because bari, v'shema, you're confident. I'm not confident, so I got to pay. But if you say, you borrowed $100 from me, and I'm like, I don't even remember, I don't remember borrowing money at all, so then the halacha will be pater, which we'll have to figure out why. That's one option of understanding the Gemara.
Again, so the first option
is where he is teveya me, and then, So then I'm responding. So in the first case, he's teveya with a vadai. The second case, he's like, I'm not sure whether I paid you, whether you borrowed money, and I'm like, I'm not sure either. So then I'm pater.
The second case is sort of like a kofar bakal.
Well, it's a little bit, but he's also not confident. It's not like he's confident. He's like, did you borrow from me? I'm like, I don't remember if I borrowed from you. So in such a case, you're pater. But again, the case is where he's teveya me. The second option. By the way, if that's the case, then the first case is he's bari. I'm Shema, and the halacha is I'm chayiv to pay because bari v'shema bari adiv. That's one option. The other option has nothing to do with him. There is no him. I'm the only one coming in. No one's teveya me. I'm showing up on your door, knocking on your door. You're like, hey, I want to be a good guy. I think I borrowed money from you. I don't know if I paid you back. So then the halacha is if you want to be lotzei sidei shamayim, if you want to be a good guy, pay him. But in the second case, where I knock on your door and I'm like, listen, I don't even know if I borrowed, then I'm not even mechuyev lotzei sidei shamayim to give you the money. So the second case, the second way of understanding the Mishnah, the first one is where he's being teveya me, and now I'm knocking on the door out of nowhere and just saying, hey, you don't even know me. I think I borrowed money from you years ago. I don't remember if I paid you back. And you're like, I don't know what you're talking about. Then in such a case, I'm mechuyev to give lotzei sidei shamayim. I'm mechuyev to give if I want to avoid, in shamayim, I want to be perfect. Then the second case would be, I knock on your door and I say, I don't even remember if I borrowed money from you. To that, I'm not even mechuyev lotzei sidei shamayim. So there's two ways to understand the Mishnah. The Gemara understands at first, like the first way, which is that you're teveya me, and then I'm responding. All these cases in the Mishnayos are responses. Says the Gemara, Itmar, general halacha. Manali biyadecha. I say, Adam, you owe me $100. And he says, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not sure. I don't know. Bari v'shema. What's the halacha? It's a machlokes. Rav Huna, Rav Yehuda, Amri chayiv. Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda say chayiv because bari v'shema, bari adif. Rav Nachman, Rav Yochanan, Amri poter. Why? Because they say bari v'shema, bari adif does not apply to money. They hold that when it comes to money, uki money b'cheskas mari, which is hamoitzi mechavero olavaraya. Bari v'shem is not going to be enough. I'm saying I'm not sure. I'm holding on to the money. The money's in my pocket. You got to produce edus. You got to testify. Whatever. Correct. So says the Gemara. So there's a machlokes in a case where I say you owe me money and you say I'm not sure. So according to Rav Nachman, you're chayiv. Here's the kasha. If you understand our Mishnah as being this type of scenario where I'm teveya you and then you respond, what does the Mishnah say? You're chayiv. So that Gemara says, right? What's the first case of the Mishnah? If you go with the assumption that there's two people, it's I go to you and I knock on the door. I say, hey, you owe me $100, and you're like, I don't know if I owe $100. What's the halacha chayiv? Bari v'shema, bari adif. So this is a raya. Like Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda, and not like Rabbi Nachman. So Rabbi Nachman is going to be forced to say, our Mishnah is not talking at all, there's no teveya. It's a guy just knocking on a rando's door saying, hey, I borrowed money from you. You don't even remember, I borrowed money from you. I'm not sure if I paid you back. And the chiyuv is not because of bari shema, there's no bari v'shema, there's one guy. And the chiyuv is lotzei sidei shamayim. So that's the way to get out of the Mishnah. Says the Gemara, bari v'shem bari adif. Nachman Rav Yochanan poter uki mani b'cheskas maris. It says the Gemara Tanan. I have a Mishnah that sounds not like Rabbi Nachman because what does the Mishnah say? Aval mamar le'eni yadeim helvisinu poter. What is the case of our Mishnah? Hey chidami, ilema deloy katavale reisha nami like katavale. Is our Mishnah where there is no other guy? Right. The case of the Mishnah is. The Gemara assumes the case of the Mishnah is where you say, hey, you owe me $100, and I say, I'm not sure. Or if then the second case is, you're like, I think you owe me $100, not sure, and I'm like, I'm not sure either. Why does the Gemara assume that that's the case? Because if there is no other guy, then, like, what does it mean, chayiv? If the Mishnah says, if I say to you, I owe you $100, but I'm not sure if I paid you back, the Gemara says chayiv. Chayiv implies there's two people here. That you're saying I owe you, I'm saying I'm not sure. So chayiv, I have to pay you. If there's just one guy, like who chayiv to who? Like chayiv implies that there is like a tviyah. So it says the Gemara, am I chayiv? Why are you chayiv? If he's not asking for the money, what are you chayiv for? So ella de katavile. It must be that the case is where the guy is asking for money. So the first case in the Mishnah is I say you owe me $100. You say I'm not sure. And what's the halacha chayiv? Why? Because bari v'shem and bari adiv. So you see, bari v'shem and bari adiv applies to money as well. I'm sorry, the chayiv. And then the second case of the Mishnah is where the first case is I messed up. The first case is I say to you, you owe me $100, and you say, I agree I owe you $100, but I think I paid it back. So in that case, you're going to be chayiv because you acknowledge that there's a chiyuv. But in the second case where I say, you owe me $100, and you say, I'm not sure I owe you $100. The halach is potter. Why? Why don't you say bari v'shem bari adiv? You see from here, it's a raya to Rabbi Nachman. No, it's a raya to Rabbi Nachman that over here, we don't say bari v'shem bari adiv. Meaning in the second case, I say you owe me $100. And you're like, I don't know if I owe $100. What's the halacha potter? Why don't you say bari v'shem bari adiv? The answer is hamotzi mechaver levaraya when it comes to mammon. So a raya to Rabbi Nachman. In the first case, where you acknowledge that you owe me money, that's not even a shema. You acknowledge you owe me money. You just, I guess they don't even look at it as a shema. You acknowledge. Shema is where you're not sure whether you owe money. Over here, you acknowledge you borrow the money. In the second case, where you're not sure you borrow the money, what's the halacha potter? So why? Why don't you say bari v'shem bari adiv? It must be you don't say that. So it's a raya to Rabbi Nachman. So the Gemara responds, no. The Gemara says, the case is where there is no other guy. It's a rando knocking on the door, and what does he say? He says, hey, I owe you money. So what does it mean, chayiv? Chayiv too? Lotzi sidei shemayim. Chayiv, meaning that if you want to make yourself innocent in shemayim, you got to pay. So the Gemara says, v'reisha ba'lotzi sidei shemayim. Itmarnami, we have a brisa that actually speaks us out that the Mishnah is not talking about tviyah. The Mishnah is just talking about lotzi sidei shemayim. Because the brisa says, Amar Rav Chiya Rav Yechanan, Harmil chaver mani b'dechav lo emer eini yedeh, chayiv b'ba lotzi sidei shemayim. Okay, pretty clear. Okay, the next Mishnah, there's two ways to read it, and there's going to be like 6 different opinions. Let's go through this slowly, the best that we can. Hagoynev tla min ha'eder. I steal a sheep from the flock. V'hechziroi. And I return it without telling you. Without telling you. So I steal the sheep, and then I just, like, in the middle of the night, I put it back. I'm just like, I don't want to tell anybody. I put it back. I put it back. What's the halacha? Meisei nignav chayiv. If anything happens to that sheep, I'm chayiv. Meaning, it is not considered returned without telling you. Okay. That's halacha number 1. Then halacha number 2. Lo yodu. Very similar case. The Bailim don't know about it. I stole something without telling them. Loi bignevasi. So the first case could be where they know about it. It's a little unclear. The first case is they know about it. I steal from them. They know about it. I return it without their knowledge. The halach is no good. But then it says lo yadu Bailim. The owners don't know about it. I stole loi bignevasi loi bechazerasai. I steal it with them without them knowing it. I put it back without them knowing it. What's the halacha? Monu esat soinu shleimahi. I don't tell them about it, but they count the sheep in the morning. Let's say they had 10 sheep in their flock. Middle of the night, I steal it, and then I bring it back, because I feel bad. I never told them anything. The next morning, I never told them, but they count the sheep. They say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Well, all here, potter. I'm good. So now...
In the middle of the night, he goes, and he steals some sheep, takes the sheep, and he puts it back. Nobody knows it.
Correct.
He just borrowed the sheep.
No, he stole the sheep. It's not borrowing. It's borrowing without permission to steal it.
In the second case, no one knew anything.
No one knew it. In the first case, they knew about it, and it says that you return it without knowledge, no good. The second case, you stole it without them knowing, and it says that as long as they count it in the morning, yaitza, counting is enough. Counting is like they know about it.
In the Resha,
I don't understand.
where he steals it, but he returns it, and no one knows about it. It could be even if it's a regular shomer, no? If a regular shomer returns some,
the Gemara is going to deal with shomer later on. I'd rather just let's think of it being a ganef. It's a lot easier because the Gemara deals with shomer like a little bit later. So it's just straight up ganef. Yeah, what do you say? You good? Okay. So now here's the question. The end of the Mishnah is that if you steal it without their knowledge and you return it and they count it, that's enough. The question is, does counting work if they know about it? You see, the first case of the Mishnah is I steal it with their knowledge, I return it without their knowledge. It says no good. What if they count it? Meaning, when it says counting is enough, is that enough in all the scenarios? Is counting only enough where they don't know about it? Well, okay, so now we're going to have, I want to say, 4 or 5 shitas. And we're going to go through each one, just go through slowly, how to read the Mishnah. Let's go through each one. Amar Rav, lo das, if you steal an animal with the owner's knowledge, tzarech das, you have to tell them about it. Counting no good. Das. You steal it with their knowledge, you say, here it is back. Them counting in the morning and seeing that the flock is whole, no good. Das, das. Shaloy das, if you steal it without their knowledge, then minyan potter. Then if they counted, that's enough. Rav is going with the more simple reading of the Mishnah. So when the Mishnah says counting is enough, that's talking about the second case where it was without their knowledge. So if you steal it with their knowledge, you got to tell them about it. Without their knowledge, let them count, and that's enough. Let's keep going. Shmuel Amar, so far so good. Second opinion, Bein ladas bin shaloi ladas bin impoter. Shmuel's a different shita. He says, honestly, if they count it, it's enough either way. I don't care. Whether they know about it or not, counting is enough. So when it says counting, that means on everything, on all cases. Whether they know about it or not, as long as they count it in the morning and it's whole, I'm good. The Gemara says, that's the second opinion. Let's go to a third opinion. Rav Yochanan Amar, ladas minyan poiter. Rav Yochanan also makes sense. And that is, they all make sense, but Rav Yochanan is very easy to understand. If you steal it even with their knowledge and they count it, that's enough. Shaloi ladas, if you steal it without their knowledge, afilu minyan amiloitza, they don't even have to count it. Meaning, according to Rav Yochanan, if you steal it with their knowledge, you don't have to tell them about it. Let them count it in the morning, it's enough. So when the Mishnah says counting, that's talking about the first case where you stole it with their knowledge. Without their knowledge, they don't even have to count it. If you steal it from the middle of the night and then put it back without them knowing anything, they don't even have to count it in the morning. We're good. As long as you put it back, when you put it back, it was there, they didn't even have to count it. The Gemara says, that's the third opinion. Again, I think so far each opinion makes sense. Now you have Rav Chisda's, the first opinion that really is hard to understand. What does Rav Chisda say? See, so far what we've seen consistently is stealing with their knowledge is worse. Like stealing with their knowledge either needs knowledge, needs counting. Without their knowledge is always lighter. Oh, you stole without their knowledge? Let them count. You don't have to.
Means what, I come in and I just take it away?
Rabbi. Yeah.
There's no king in
Yeah. No. Yeah. Or you hold that Yush is alone not enough without Shinur. Yeah, fine. The point is, so far it's been consistent that them knowing about it is worse and it requires more than them not knowing, which makes sense. Now you have Rav Chisda who is like opposite view. Rav Chisda says, Ladas, if you steal it with their knowledge, minyan potter, all they got to do is count it. You don't even have to tell them you put it back. Just put it back in the middle of the night. They'll count it in the morning. That's enough. But shaloi ladas, but if you steal without their knowledge, tzarach das, you got to tell them. So it's worse. If you steal it without their knowledge, you need more. So if you steal it with their knowledge and then you just put it back, so they see that on Thursday, they see that it's stolen. They know that it's stolen. They don't have to know that you did it, but they know that it's stolen. They know that Bessie is gone. Then Thursday night, you just sneak in, you put it back. They come in the morning like, oh, good. But if you steal it without their knowledge, so middle of the night you break into their pen, take Bessie out, and then an hour later you're like, I feel bad, put it back. No good. You got to knock on the door and say, hey, I took it, but I brought it back. It's very interesting. It's like it requires more without their knowledge. So says the Gemara, the next page, my time is Rav Chisda. What's Rav Chisda's svara? That if you steal it with their knowledge, you don't have to tell them you put it back, as long as they count it. But if you steal it without their knowledge, you got to knock on the door and say, hey, I stole it. Well, what's the svara? Says the Gemara, I'll tell you why. When an animal that is stolen and it leaves the pen, it's more likely to leave again. So I, as the owner, want to know that it was stolen so that I can put a little bit better watching. So if you steal the animal at night and then put it back without my knowledge, no good, because I got to know that this animal has seen daylight. Like this animal's seen the outside. It's like Chicken Run, Chicken Little, Chicken Run, one of those, the cartoon movies. They've seen the outside. They know what life is like outside of the pen, and therefore I have to know about it. Okay, now a couple more ha'aris, and then we'll go weiter. Now, did Rava actually say that he follows Rav Chisda? That again, according to Rav Chisda, if you steal it with knowledge, all they got to do is count is enough. Counting is enough. You don't have to knock on the door. Says the Gemara, didn't Rava say, if a person sees his friend steal a sheep from his flock, picks it up with intent to steal it, and you yell at the thief, you say, hey, put it back. And then he just throws it. But you don't know if it went back into the pen. You just see him he's grabbing a chicken, and you're like, hey, what are you doing? And he just throws the chicken. You're not sure if it went into your pen or your neighbor's pen. What's the halacha? He's chayiv, meaning if something happens to the chicken, he's chayiv because he did not return it. Says the Gemara, my lav afagav money, meaning you steal with knowledge. Seemingly over here I counted, and still is no good. So I thought Rava holds like Rav Chizda that if you steal with knowledge, counting is enough. So the Gemara says, loy money. The case that is no good is where you didn't count. If you counted, it's enough. Okay. Now, one last problem, and we'll go through it. It's moving, it's not as hard as I thought. Did Rav actually say Rav Shita? What's Rav Shita? Rav Shita is that if you steal, according to Rav, if you steal with knowledge, you got to tell them about it. No knowledge, they got to count it. But you got to do something, right? You got to either they have to count it in the morning or you got to tell them about it. There's got to be something. Here's the problem. Didn't Rav say, if a thief returned the stolen lamb, even in the desert, without the person knowing at all, Yotza. The owner didn't count. You never knocked on the door, Yotza. I thought Rav holds you got to do something. You either got to knock on the door if he's aware of it, you got to let him count. Over here, Yotza without anything. Says the Gemara, Amar Chan bar Abba, Moide Rav berku asa. Rav was talking about a specifically spotted lamb. Meaning it was a lamb that was very unique in the herd. So therefore, in that case, he's aware of it. Meaning you have to either knock on the door or let him count in the morning. That's for like a sheep that looks like every other sheep. But if there's one that like stands out, right? I'm getting in the zone. I like making references. I'm going to stop in my head. Right? Let's say, I don't know, like his nose is like red or something. So like it stands out. That is fine because in such a situation, he knows about it. It's pasha. Okay, let's just run through a couple things. We'll get to the Mishnah. Once you get to the Mishnah, it's very easy. The Gemara says like this: Lema ketanoi. I think it's a machlokes tanoim. Again, we've had all these shitas. I can't really review them properly, but you basically have all these shitas where if you steal with knowledge, according to one opinion, you got to tell them about it. According to another opinion, counting is enough. You steal without knowledge. One opinion feels that you have to count. Another opinion says you got to knock on the door. Another opinion says you don't have to tell them anything. Rav Yochanan. So you have all these shitas floating around. Says the Gemara. I think it's machlokes tanoim. Lema ketanoi. What does the Mishnah say? The Mishnah says like this: Hagoynev, it's a price. I'm sorry. Hagoynev telemina eda. Two cases. Case number one: I steal sheep from the flock. Visela min akis, or I steal money from your wallet. So what's the halacha? Lemakom shegonav yachzer. I could return it to you without telling you. Okay. So you have a sheep. I'm returning to you without telling you, and money I'm putting back in your wallet. We'll analyze in a second. Div Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Kiva Omer tzarich das b'alim. Rabbi Kiva says you got to tell them. You need das. Okay. So now let's go through each one. Let's go through money first, and then let's go through the sheep. What is the machlokes by money? There's machlokes. One opinion, Rabbi Shmuel is definitely cool with less knowledge. Rabbi Kiva requires more knowledge. Now this is going to be a reference to something we're going to have in Bam Mitzvah and Elam Mitzias, which anyone from when you're a kid, you remember? Adam asay lamashrish bekisay b'chol shavasha. There's a sheet of Rav Yitzchak, and that is people always check their wallets. They always count their bills. Now, the reason why that was significant in Bava Metzia is therefore it's not Yish Shaloi Midas, it's Yish Midas, because they always check their wallets. Therefore, if you find money, this is the halacha, by the way, we paskin, if you find money in a public area without a siman, you find money on the street, you can keep it. Why? Maybe the owner doesn't know about it, he's not miyayish yet, and that's called Yish Midas, which is machlekes abaye. The answer is no. Adam, Osam, Mashik, people always check their wallet. And therefore, if there's money on the floor, they know about it, and it's gone. Okay, and by the way, the Pais can discuss nowadays that there's paper bills. Does it still apply? Back then they used to have coins. They would just like jingle their pockets, and they'd be like, okay, fine, I'll put 10 coins. But nowadays that there's paper bills, which just doesn't work like that, it's a shaila in the modern day Pais whether it still applies. Okay, the concept is people always check. Think about it. You have Machlekes, Rabbi Shmuel, and Rabbi Kiva. According to Rabbi Shmuel, you steal money, you put it back, you don't need so much knowledge. According to Rabbi Kiva, you need knowledge. Now, think about, once I told you, Rabbi Yitzchak holds, everyone always checks, which means everybody's counting. So what's the machlekes about? Is counting enough? Everyone's counting. They both agree that you're counting. The guy, in the end of the day, will count his bills, and he'll see that his money's back. So what's the machlekes? Rabbi Kiva holds, counting is not enough. You need das, like Rav. And Rabbi Shmuel holds, counting is enough. Okay, so that's the machlekes by money, because money they're always counting. So I know they're counting. The question is counting enough? The Gemara says, Savrua dukuli yames Rav Yitzchak. We assume that everyone holds like Rav Yitzchak. That means that he's going to count the money. So, my love. So what's the machlokes about? The machlokes is if you steal something midas, meaning the case is not where you're a pickpocket, you took the money. He noticed the money was gone. So it's not like he didn't notice. He noticed the money was gone, and the machlekes is counting enough. There's got to be counting. Machlekes is whether counting is enough. That's the machlekes by money. What's the machlekes by a sheep? People don't count their sheep. So what's the machlekes by sheep? Huh?
Count the sheep every morning.
No, but there's no assumption that they automatically count their sheep. It could be common, but it's not Adam, Aslam, Mishra, Kol, Rishah. So what's the machlekes by sheep? So the Gemara says, B'tlesh loy ledas, u'beplug to Rav Chizda Rav Yochanan. You know what the machlekes by sheep is? The case by sheep is where you stole without his knowledge, and you put it back without his knowledge, and he didn't count. The machlekes is, does he have to count? If you remember, Rav Yochanan holds that if you steal something in the middle of the night, you don't even have to tell him. He doesn't even have to count. Yotza. That's Rav Yishmael. Rav Akiva, who says, no, he has to at least count, and you actually got to tell him. That's Rav Chizda, because remember, Rav Chizda held that if you steal something in the middle of the night, you got to knock on the door to tell him. Why? Because that animal has now seen daylight. So the machlekes Rav Yishmael, Rav Akiva, by money is the machlekes, the first one. By counting is enough. And by sheep, they have a second argument, is whether it's shaloi ladas, and the machlekes is, do you have to tell them or not? So,
And what penalty would there be?
well, no, it's just it wouldn't be considered returns until, if anything were to happen to it, you would have to then replace it. The Gemara has one more possibility by the sheep. Amar Rav Zvid Mishmei Derava B'Goynev Mishras Bailim Kuli Am Pligid Rav Chizda. It could be that the machlekes by sheep is not related to this at all. It could be everyone agrees to Rav Chizda that if you steal something without their knowledge, you got to knock on the door. So what's the machlekes Rav Yishmael Rav Akiva? V'hacha b'shoymer sheganim meshrusa sheyachs l'makom sheganim k'mivligi. Rav Akiva savar kol shleish mirasai. Rav Yishmael sar loy kol shleish mirasai. Machlekes is like this. Everyone agrees that if the Gemara is saying with sheep, shloi ladas. If I break into your house in the middle of the night and I steal the sheep and I put it back, everyone agrees I got to knock on the door. So what's the machlekes Rav Yishmael Rav Akiva? The case is not a ganav. The case is a shomer. That's what you were talking about. What if the shomer took it? Meaning I'm your shomer. And in the middle of the night, I take the sheep out and I'm like, I'm going to keep it. And then I'm like, oh, what am I doing? Let me put it back. The question is, am I yotze by putting it back? Meaning, am I still the shomer even after attempted theft? If I'm still the shomer, then I don't have to knock on your door. I'm the shomer. I told myself. But if you hold the shmira is over the second you attempt to attempted theft, the shmira ends, I got to knock on your door. So it's a side machlekes about whether an attempted theft by a shomer ends the shmira.
We had this before, right?
We've had so
The
much.
shower turns into a god.
Yeah, that's
is relying on whether the owner is.
correct. But we had it as a possibility of whether a person wants him to continue the shmira. Okay, one more thing until the Mishnah, and then the Mishnah is very easy. One more point. Lema minyan poiter tanahi. I think there's a machlekes tanaim again whether having him count is considered a hashava. Again, we've had that machlekes throughout over this past amid that if I steal something from you and I'm not going to tell you about it, but you're going to count it in the morning, whether that's considered a proper returning. How so? Tanya, I steal money from you and then I put it back into your wallet without you knowing. What's the machlekes? Tani chada yatsa, tani lo yatsa. It's machlekes whether it's okay. Now think about it. Think about it. We assume that, right, Rav Yitzchak, which means that you're going to count your money at the end of the day, and you're going to see that it's back. So what's the machlekes about? Is counting enough? So the Gemara says, we assume that everyone has Rav Yitzchak. Again, I steal money from you, and I put it back into your wallet without telling you. So machlekes whether I did a returning, hashava. What's the machlekes? Well, we assume that everyone agrees like Rav Yitzchak, that you're going to count at the end of the day, and you're going to see your money's back. So what's the machlekes? The Gemara says, the machlekes is whether you counting is considered enough. So the Gemara says, no. You know what the machlekes is? The machlekes is Guf and Rav Yitzchak. Do you believe in Rav Yitzchak? Meaning, if you taka counted at the end of the day, you're definitely yaitza. The machlekes is, are people accustomed to counting their money? This concept of Rav Yitzchak that we just have a given is taka machlekes. The Gemara says, loy. Savri, if you hold like Rav Yitzchak that people check their money at the end of the day or all the time, everyone would agree that you're yaitza. And the Rav Yitzchak the machlekes is gufa whether you agree in Rav Yitzchak's svara. Mar issa Rav Yitzchak, mar less Rav Yitzchak. That's option number one. Or option number two, I'll be honest, I find this confusing, but Iba Yisema, Dukuli Alma issa Rav Yitzchak. Everyone agrees like Rav Yitzchak that people count their money all the time. So what's the machlekes? V'loy kasha, meaning everyone agrees that they count their money all the time. They only count their money in their wallet. They don't count their money in their hand. So the case is, Everyone agrees that if you count it, it's enough. And everyone agrees they count their wallet. So what's the machlekes about? What's the machlekes about? The machlekes is if I give the money, where did I give the money? If I put the money in your wallet, it's fine because you're going to count it. The case is I put your money, one brisa says, no good, I put money in your hand. You don't count it when it's in your hand, you just put it into your jar at home. I don't know why the people would count it less if it's in their hand than in their wallet, but that's what they used to do. Or the last one I think is the most obvious, which is you know what the answer is? Everyone agrees that people count their money. Everyone agrees that counting is enough. Here's the problem. So one price is good, makes sense because you're going to count it. The other price is no good is where you have other money in your wallet. You won't know. Like if you have an empty wallet, you had $6 and now your wallet's empty, and then your wallet's still empty and I put your money back, you'll count that your money's back. The case is a day later when you put your money in, you had already had $33 now. So yeah, you're going to count up your money, but you're not going to be able to figure out, you understand what I'm saying? You're not going to be able to tell whether the stolen money is returned. You just count your money, but your other money in the wallet now, so you won't be able to figure it out. Okay, let's just finish up. This Mishnah until the end of the Amid is dealing with the following premise, and that is you cannot buy stuff from people that is probably stolen. Okay, so the Mishnah says like this: Ein loichen min haroyim tzamar v'cholav ugdim. You can't purchase from shepherds wool, milk, or young goats, because most of them were stolen. Okay, v'loy mishamer peris eitzim v'peris, and you can't buy from fruit watchmen. The people that were in charge of watching the orchards, you can't buy fruit or wood from them because they were mostly stolen. You're allowed to buy from the average woman woolen garments in the areas of Israel called Yehuda. Ukli pishin begalil, and you could buy pishin in Galil. Va'agolim b'sharon, and calves in the Sharon. Meaning, what is the chiddush is that we don't say that think about it. Why are you allowed to buy from a woman anything? Too many stuff again. It's being recorded. Why are you buying? Why are you allowed to? So, what's the concern? The concern is, like if you stop right there, it sounds really bad. Why are we about to buy from women? The problem is everything should be stolen. If you think about it, because if it really belongs to their husband, if they don't have permission to sell it, if they're just pawning their jewelry without their husband's knowledge, that's considered theft. So the answer is these items in these areas. It was common, and the husband was cool with it. But if any woman sells you something and says, "Do me a favor, don't show anybody that you bought it from me. Don't tell anyone you bought it from me," then you're not allowed to, because that is a clear sign that they're doing it without their husband's knowledge or consent, and that's considered theft. You could buy eggs and chickens anywhere. Eggs and chickens were so cheap, it was not worth the risk of stealing it. It wasn't worth the risk. So eggs and chicken, it wasn't kedai. You're going to make $1. No one would steal it because it just wasn't. It wasn't worth the risk of being thrown in jail. Okay, Tana Rabban, the Brisa says, "Ein loichem min haroyim." You can't buy from shepherds like izin, like gedim, goats or young goats, like gizin, fleeces, like tlushin shel tzemer, or any pieces of wool because they were all stolen. Avaloichem min tfurim. You could buy sewn garments. Why? Because even if they're stolen, they turned it into a garment, and they're cutting it with shinoi maisa. So even if it's taka stolen, it's theirs now. Okay. You could buy cheese or milk if it's in the desert, because most animals that are in the desert don't belong to people, so it's not stolen. But you cannot buy cheese or milk from these shepherds in the city areas, because they probably got it from the animals that are in the city, which are not theirs, so it's considered stolen. You could buy 4 or 5 sheep at once, because they would not risk stealing 4 or 5 sheep and selling it. That's too much. Arba v'chamesh gizin. You could buy 4 or 5 fleeces at once. But you can't buy 2. Now, obvious question. I could buy 4 or 5, but I can't buy 2. Well, what about 3? I can buy 4 or 5, which implies everything less than 4 or 5 no good. But then it says I could buy 2. I could buy 2. I could buy 4 or 5, but not 2. So what about 3? No. So no one buys 3. So the Gemara says, okay. Rabbi Yehuda has a different sheet that he says, "Baisus loichem mehen." You could buy domestic sheep, because they would not. Domestic sheep, you, the owner of the sheep, are always checking. You'll make sure that it's not stolen. But midbari esein loichem, you can't buy range sheep. Range sheep are that the owner lets them go to the range. People would steal that without the owner's knowledge. Okay, by the way, we're going to have to figure out, according to Rabbi Yehuda, we'll finish up in like 2 minutes. When Rabbi Yehuda says, so the first opinion is that you could buy 4 or 5 at a time, not 2. And then Rabbi Yehuda says, you could buy domestic, not long-range sheep. Is he, with the numbers, is he saying 4 or 5, I only permit with long-range? Or he's saying, no, even 2 that you're asering is mutter with long range. Is he being more lenient or more machmer? Okay, let's finish up. Kol yishadavar, what's the rule? Kol sharoya moicher ba'al bayis margish bay. If you're buying something that the owner would notice if it was stolen, then loichaman, you're allowed to buy because they would not steal it because they'd be caught. Ein margishim, but if it's something that the owner will not notice if it's taken away, small trinkets, ein loichaman, you can't buy it because they're probably stolen. Amar mar loichamin arba v'chamish soin arba v'chamish gizin. The question is like this: you could buy 4 or 5. Hashi yishleim arba chamishim boy. If you could buy 4, you definitely could buy 5. It says you could buy 4 or 5. What do you mean 4 or 5? If you could buy 4, you could definitely buy 5. So the Gemara says, Amar Chizda arba metei chamishi. You know what 4 or 5 means? It doesn't mean 4 or 5. It means 4/5. You could buy 4/5 of his flock because he would not risk that much stolen property. He would not have a flock that's 4/5 stolen. It's too ridiculous. He'll get caught. And some say some say you could buy 4 sheep from a small flock or 5 sheep from a large flock because that ratio he would not have stolen property. The Gemara has one more question. Hagufa kasha, I don't understand. You said you could buy 4 or 5. Arba chamesh in, aval shalosh lo. Ema seifa, avalosh teitzon. Hashalosh mizin. Question, could you buy 3? Because it says you could buy 4 or 5, which implies 3 is no good. But then it says you can't buy 2, which implies 3 is good. So could you buy 3 or not? So loy kasha, ha b'briyasa, ha b'chishiyasa. The answer is, it depends. 3 depends. Healthy sheep, you're allowed to buy 3, because I, as the owner of the sheep, would not let 3 healthy sheep get out of my way. If they were stolen, I'd know about it. Ha b'chishiyasa, weak sheep and frail sheep, 3 is a problem because you could steal 3 without me noticing because I don't really care about them so much. Let's keep going. Let's finish up. Again, the first opinion says you could buy 4 or 5. 4 yes, 2 no. That was the first opinion. Comes Rabbi Yehuda and he says it depends. Domestic, no good. Domestic, good. Long range, no good. So the question is, Rabbi Yehuda, is Rabbi Yehuda being more lenient or more strict? What do I mean? Maybe he's being more strict. The Tana Kamma permits 4 or 5. To that, Rabbi Yehuda says, Hani mili baisis. To that, Rabbi Yehuda is being strict. He's saying that 4 or 5 only applies to domestic, not long-range sheep. So you're permitting, the Tana Kamma permits all 4 or 5 of all types of sheep, long-range domestic. Rabbi Yehuda is saying, no, I'm only cool with domestic, not long-range. He's being strict. Or perhaps he's being more lenient. Perhaps he's being lenient, meaning the Tana Kamma asers 2 types of sheep. Any type of sheep you can't buy 2 of from shepherds. To that, Rabbi Yehuda says, no, I think if it's domestic, it's fine. So is he being more lenient or more strict? Says the Gemara, Tashema, the Tanya, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Loichen Baisis Mehen, being Loichem in Barias. Rabbi Yehuda says you could buy domestic sheep and not long-range sheep. Ubekol Mokoim Loichem in Arba V'chamesh Soin. And in any place you could buy 4 or 5 sheep. That implies the fact that he says mikol makom, meaning you could always buy 4 or 5 sheep, all types, domestic, long range. He is being lenient and he's saying when you aser 2, that's only true with long range, but domestic sheep are going to be okay. We'll stop here.